In February, I taught 3 in-person classes here in the building at Beth Tzedec, which we called the Winter Wellbeing Workshops. On February 11th, we reviewed Nichum Avelim, Comforting Mourners. On February 18th, we explored Bikur Cholim, Helping the Ailing. And on February 25th, a group of us did a deep dive into caring for elderly parents. This was the description for this session. Navigate, living in the sandwich generation from a Jewish lens, as we explore a child's responsibility for an older parent. Join Rabbi Fryer Bodzin for a mix of text study and practical applications about what it means when the caregiver role is reversed. So this all took place in February, late February, mid-February, and within a few weeks, most of us who have living parents nearby would not be able to see them for months. Once COVID began, I pushed these classes aside and I started living a rabbinic COVID lifestyle, which was working from home, Zoom, 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 phone call. And anything before mid-March became a distant memory. But then 2 weeks ago, a trauma occurred. I got the call that nobody wants to get. Both of my parents fell down the steps, and the ambulances, plural, arrived to my parents' house in Thornhill. By 3 or 4 a.m., I arrived at the hospital, and I shuttled back and forth between both parents in the ER. And the day was I spent a full day in the emergency room with them during this pandemic. And it was the most time that I had spent with them in months, probably even years. And I have tremendous kavod and respect for all of the medical professionals and therapists that I saw that day at North York General. Now, 2 weeks later, one parent is in rehab with broken bones, and another is just 2 doors away from me, thank God, in independent living. And these last 2 weeks, there were many steps to get to this point. But something really unusual happened during that first week of what I call triage. Reb Steve told me that my place was not at shul that week. Our assistant Sherry set up an away message on my email, and I spent nearly an entire week managing and sorting my parents' pain and health and care and plans for healing, and it's still ongoing. And my brother was helping too. But 6 weeks before the most complicated set of high holy days in history, one rabbi told the other rabbi to step away from the shul and be a daughter so that she could fully follow her own advice that she taught in February and participate in Kibud Horim, the mitzvah of honoring parents. It was my time to focus on that mitzvah found in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5. Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. There is, in fact, a time for every purpose under heaven. And even if most people are doing one thing, that doesn't mean you should too. It kind of reminded me when I was a kid and my parents would say to me when I wanted to be like everyone else, if everyone jumps off the CN Tower, that doesn't mean you have to do it also. Maybe some of your parents told you that too. But even when the spiritual leadership team was working around the clock for our Beth Tzedec community, I was told to engage my focus elsewhere. And we see this sort of behavior clearly in our parsha. In chapter 20 of Shoftim, we read, When you take the field against your enemies and you see horses and chariots, forces larger than yours, have no fear for them. For God, Hashem, who brought you from the lands of Egypt, is with you. Before you join battle, the priest shall come forward and address the troops. The Kohen will then tell the people that God is with them. And then in the next verse, there's an official exemption list. We read, Mi ha'ish asher bana bayit chadash v'lo chanachu. Is there anyone who has built a new house and hasn't dedicated yet? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in battle and not have the chance to dedicate it. Another example, the next verse, Mi ha'ish asher nata keren v'lo chilelu. Is there anyone who has planted a vineyard but has not yet harvested it? Let him go back home, lest he die in battle and another harvest it. A third, Mi ha'ish asher eras isha v'lo lekacha. Is there a woman who maybe got halfway through being married but didn't quite seal the deal yet? Let him go back home, lest he die in battle and another marry her. And for these three categories, there's no busha, there's no embarrassment, there's no stigma. At that time, they are exempt from doing what everyone else is doing. And these three exemptions, they refer to the establishment of home and agricultural livelihood and family. All three are major anchors of society. Without them, there is no community. It makes sense. There are times when going to war is and was necessary, but our world is not binary or black and white. There was not one model that fit all, and not everyone was fit to be a soldier at that time. And so according to Reb Steve, my situation was also an exemption. He basically said, go back home and involve yourself in family care. So why did he say that? Is it because he's a nice guy? I just looked at him when I did that. Also, it could be, but I think it is if we look more closely at the fifth commandment of honoring parents, we can take note that while it is placed on the half of the mitzvahs that are bein adam lamakom, between humanity and God, it can also be interpreted as an interpersonal mitzvah, which is on the second half. And I realized, does the camera even show them? Martin, do you see the arc in this view right now? Okay, so I just made marks for no reason. But the Kli Yakar teaches that the mitzvah concludes the first 5 of the 10 commandments, which all feature commandments that are bein adam makom, between man and God, or humans and God. And that's why each of those 5 statements includes the words, Adonai, your God. Even though the mitzvah of honoring your parents is indeed bein adam lachavero, it's interpersonal within people, but nevertheless, it pertains to God. Okay, we have the view now. Kabed et, that's the 5th one. It's on the side that are between God and people. So the way I've always understood the placement of that mitzvah is that God really wants us to do this interpersonal mitzvah. And by honoring our parents, we also honor God. Since the trauma, the incident, the accident, I don't know what I'm calling it yet, the texts that I taught in February have made their way back to the forefront of my mind. And one of them was taught by Sirach, who said, Hitchazek bekibud avicha v'lo ta'azvehu kol yemei chayecha. Be steadfast in honoring your parent and forsake your parent not all the days of your life. Don't forsake your parents. And that's why my phone has been at my side, and members of the SLT covered some of the minyanim and daily Tanakh that I was meant to lead and teach, especially when my parents were still in the hospital. You know, we read in the Sefer HaChinuch, a person should meditate on the fact that his father and mother are the reasons for his existence in the world, and that therefore it is truly incumbent upon him to act respectfully and in ways that will benefit and help them. For they brought him into the world and showed him all manner of kindness and affections when he was young. In retrospect, I would not have been able to function at my potential on your behalf had I not taken the time to focus fully on my parents. It's getting very close to the Yamim Noraim. We're in the month of Elul. And the last thing that I want for either of my parents is to feel like the psalmist who famously wrote, Al tashlicheni la'et zikna, kichlot kochi al ta'azveni. Don't cast me off in old age. When my strength fails, do not forsake me. And I just can't do that. And I won't do that. And I'm so grateful to be in an environment and a community that understands. In my life, both personally, but also professionally, so many people have set the example for me on how to do kibud horim as an adult. And I really hope that the next generation sees what I'm doing, and when their time comes, they'll do it for their parents as well. In Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz. Im ein derech eretz, ein Torah. If there's no Torah, there's no derech eretz, there's no proper behavior. If there's no proper behavior, there's no Torah. What's the point of it all? Rambam explains that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah meant that each of these two, each one of the two helps the existence of the other and completes the other one. It's a good expression to remember. If you're not a mensch and you're just studying Torah all day, you're kind of missing the big picture. My friends and my colleagues on the SLT, they showed immense derech eretz so that I could better teach Torah and I can live Torah with all of you. And for that, I'm grateful. Shabbat shalom.